You're pathetic, you know that? The words hit Caroline like a slap. She stood frozen in her small kitchen, a pot of pasta boiling over behind her, steam rising like a warning she should have heeded months ago. Derek stepped closer, and her golden retriever, Sunny, let out a low, rumbling growl from the corner of the room. The dog's hackles rose, teeth bared in a way Caroline had never seen before. Sunny had always been gentle, a therapy dog she'd trained herself, the kind of animal that greeted strangers with a wagging tail and hopeful eyes. But not Derek. Never Derek. "Call off your mutt," Derek snapped, his handsome face twisting into something ugly. She's never done this before." Caroline's voice came out smaller than she intended. She hated that. Hated how she shrunk around him. How she'd become this diminished version of herself over the past 8 months. Maybe because you finally trained her to be as useless as you are. He grabbed his jacket from the back of the kitchen chair. "I don't know why I bother coming over here. Your apartment smells like dog. You never have anything good to eat. And honestly, I'm starting to think this whole thing was a mistake." Caroline felt the familiar sting behind her eyes, but refused to let the tears fall. Not in front of him. Not again. "Then why do you keep coming back?" The question surprised her. It surprised him too, based on the way his eyes narrowed. "Because you're convenient," he said, his tone deliberately cruel. "Because you're always here, always waiting, always grateful for whatever scraps I give you. It's honestly kinda sad. Caroline." Sunny growled again, louder this time, and took a step forward. "I mean it," Derek said, backing toward the door. "Either put that dog in another room, or I'm leaving." "Then leave." The words hung in the air between them. Caroline couldn't quite believe she'd said them, but something had shifted inside her. Maybe it was the way Sunny was trying to protect her, the way her sweet, gentle dog had sensed what Caroline had been refusing to see for months. Maybe it was the pasta boiling over on the stove, ruining another dinner she'd tried to make special for someone who didn't deserve it. Maybe she was just tired. So tired. Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Fine. You want to be alone? You want to end up like your mother? 52 years old and nobody to... Get out." Caroline's voice was stronger now. She moved to stand beside Sunny, her hand finding the dog's head. "Get out of my apartment. You'll regret this," he said, yanking open the door. "You'll be calling me by tomorrow, begging me to come back." He stepped into the hallway and nearly collided with someone. Caroline caught only a glimpse. Tall, dark hair, an expensive charcoal coat. Before Derek muttered something under his breath and stormed toward the elevator. The door swung shut, and she was alone. Alone with her dog and her ruined pasta, and the strange, shaky feeling of having finally stood up for herself. Her legs gave out, and she sank to the kitchen floor. Sunny immediately pressed against her, warm and solid and real, licking the tears that Caroline could no longer hold back. "Good girl," she whispered into the dog's golden fur. "You knew, didn't you?" "You always knew." Outside in the hallway, Marcus Ashford stood perfectly still, watching the closed door of apartment 4B. He'd heard everything. The cruel words, the woman's trembling voice, the dog's protective growl. He'd been heading to his own apartment, the penthouse at the top of this building he'd purchased 6 months ago, when the door had flown open and the angry man had nearly knocked him over. Marcus wasn't the kind of person who got knocked over. Not anymore. The man, Derek he'd heard her call him, hadn't even apologized. Just muttered something and kept walking, radiating the particular arrogance of someone who'd never faced real consequences in his life. Marcus knew men like that. He'd grown up around them. He'd become something far worse than them in many ways. But even he had lines. Even he had rules. And one of those rules was that you didn't speak to a woman like that. Not ever. He should go. He should take the elevator up to his penthouse and pour himself a scotch and forget about the crying woman in apartment 4B. His life was complicated enough. His family business was complicated enough. The last thing he needed was to get involved in some stranger's relationship drama. But he could still hear her crying. The sound was faint through the door, muffled, like she was trying to be quiet about it, like she was embarrassed, and that made something twist in his chest, something he thought he'd cut out of himself years ago. He raised his hand to knock, then stopped. What would he even say? He was a stranger with a very particular reputation, though she probably didn't know that. Most people in this building didn't know that the man in the penthouse was the head of the Ashford family, and what the Ashford family actually did. He lowered his hand and stepped back. This wasn't his concern. He had a meeting in an hour with his brother, a shipment to oversee, a problem with the Kozlov family that needed handling. He didn't have time for crying women and protective dogs. But as he walked toward the elevator, he found himself glancing back at her door. 4B. He'd remember that. 2 days later, Caroline was on her hands and knees in the hallway, trying to coax a terrified cat out from under the building's antique radiator. "Come on, sweetie," she murmured, her voice soft and calm despite the uncomfortable position. "I'm not going to hurt you." "I just want to help." The cat, a scraggly orange tabby that had clearly seen better days, hissed and pressed itself further into the corner. "She's been there for 3 hours, said Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman from apartment 4A, hovering anxiously behind Caroline. "I heard her crying this morning, but I can't get down there like you can. My knees, you know." "It's okay. I've got her." Caroline pulled a small bag of treats from her pocket. She always carried them for situations exactly like this, and placed one near the edge of the radiator. "She's scared. Probably been on the streets for a while." "Should I call animal control?" "Not yet. Let me try first." Caroline had been a veterinary technician for 12 years. She'd worked with frightened animals, aggressive animals, animals in pain. She knew how to wait, how to be patient, how to make herself small and non-threatening. The cat's eyes, one green, one blue, watched her warily. "That's right," Caroline whispered. "I'm just going to sit here. Take your time." She heard the elevator open behind her, heard expensive shoes on the marble floor, but didn't turn around. Couldn't afford the distraction. The cat was starting to inch forward, nose twitching toward the treat. What's going on here? The voice was deep, smooth, with an accent Caroline couldn't quite place. Something European, maybe. Or old money American. The kind of voice that expected to be answered. "Stray cat," Mrs. Patterson explained. "She's been stuck under there all morning. Caroline's trying to help." Caroline still didn't turn around. The cat had one paw extended now, almost touching the treat. So close. "Should I call someone?" the man asked. "No," Caroline said quietly. "Please, just be very still." For a moment she wondered if he'd argue. People with voices like that usually argued. But he didn't. He went silent, and she felt him standing behind her, watching. The cat took another step, then another. Its mouth closed around the treat. "That's it," Caroline breathed. "Good girl. Want another one?" She placed a second treat a little closer to herself. The cat hesitated, then came forward. Then again, and again. It took 15 minutes, but eventually the tabby was close enough to touch. Caroline held out her hand, let the cat sniff her fingers. Then, moving slowly, she scooped the animal into her arms. The cat meowed in protest, but didn't scratch. "Oh, wonderful!" Mrs. Patterson clapped her hands. "What will you do with her?" "Take her to the clinic," Caroline said, finally rising to her feet. Her knees ached from the hard floor. "Get her checked out. See if she has a microchip." She turned around and nearly dropped the cat. The man standing behind her was, well, he was something. Tall, with dark hair graying slightly at the temples. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, eyes so pale they were almost silver. He was wearing another expensive coat, camel-colored this time, over a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. But it wasn't his appearance that made her breath catch. It was the way he was looking at her, like he was seeing something surprising, something unexpected. "That was impressive," he said. It's my job. Sort of. She clutched the cat closer, feeling suddenly disheveled in her old jeans and faded sweater. I work at a veterinary clinic. Ah, his lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. That explains the dog. I'm sorry? The golden retriever. I've seen you walking her in the mornings. He paused. She's very well trained. Oh, thank you. That's Sunny. Caroline was rambling now. She knew it, but something about this man made her nervous in a way she couldn't explain. I trained her myself. She's a therapy dog. Or she was. She's semi-retired now. Semi-retired? She still visits the children's hospital once a week, but she's 9 now, and I don't want to push her too hard. The man's expression shifted slightly. That's kind of you. There was something in the way he said it, like kindness was a foreign concept to him. Like he was studying it the way someone might study a rare specimen. I should go, Caroline said, suddenly needing to escape this strange conversation. I need to get her to the clinic. She started toward her apartment to grab her car keys, then stopped. I'm sorry, I don't think we've met. I'm Caroline Murphy. I know. She blinked. You do? Mrs. Patterson mentioned your name. He extended his hand. Marcus Ashford. I live in the penthouse. His handshake was firm and warm, and Caroline felt something spark along her skin. She pulled her hand back quickly. Nice to meet you, she managed. I really do need to. Of course, he stepped aside. Perhaps I'll see you again, Caroline Murphy. The way he said her name made her shiver. She wasn't sure why. She nodded, ducked into her apartment, and leaned against the closed door with the cat still in her arms. What, she whispered to herself, was that? The cat meowed, unimpressed. Marcus Ashford had a problem. He stood in his penthouse, looking down at the city through floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of scotch untouched in his hand. The problem was Caroline Murphy. He'd looked into her, of course. He looked into everyone in his building, a necessary precaution given his line of work. She was 46 years old, divorced, no children, worked at a veterinary clinic downtown, had lived in this building for 3 years, paid her rent on time, kept to herself. Nothing remarkable. Nothing that should have caught his attention. But he'd seen her coax that cat out from under the radiator with such patience, such gentleness. He'd heard the softness in her voice. And he'd remembered the sound of her crying 2 nights ago, and the cruel words that had made her cry. He shouldn't care. He had no reason to care. And yet, his phone buzzed, a text from his brother. Kozlov's making moves. Need to meet tonight. Marcus typed back a response, already shifting back into work mode. The Caroline Murphy problem would have to wait. He had a family to protect, a business to run. He didn't have time for distractions. Caroline thought about Marcus Ashford far more than she should have over the next week. She told herself it was nothing. He was attractive, sure. Magnetic, even. But he was also clearly wealthy, clearly powerful, clearly the kind of man who lived in a completely different world than she did. And besides, she'd just ended things with Derek. The last thing she needed was to develop a crush on her mysterious neighbor. You're thinking about him again, said Piper, Caroline's co-worker at the clinic during their lunch break. I'm not. You are. You get this little crinkle right here. Piper poked the spot between Caroline's eyebrows. Every time. Who is he? Nobody. Just a neighbor. A hot neighbor? Piper. A rich, hot neighbor? I'm not having this conversation. Piper grinned, tucking a strand of bright purple hair behind her ear. At 28, she was nearly 20 years younger than Caroline, but they'd become close friends over the 3 years they'd worked together. You need to have this conversation. You just dumped the worst boyfriend in the history of boyfriends. You should be celebrating. You should be flirting with hot, rich neighbors. Derek wasn't the worst. He told you that you'd end up alone like your mother. Your mother, who, by the way, chose to be single because she was happy that way. Caroline looked down at her sandwich. I know. Then why do you keep defending him? I'm not. she sighed. I just spent 8 months with someone who made me feel like I wasn't enough. I can't just move on. Not yet. Piper's expression softened. I get it, but at least tell me about the hot neighbor. Distraction is healthy. So Caroline told her about the hallway, the cat, the strange intensity in his silver eyes, about the way he'd stood perfectly still when she'd asked him to, without question, without complaint, about the way he'd said her name. Marcus Ashford, Piper repeated thoughtfully. Why does that sound familiar? He probably runs some company or something. He definitely has money. Piper pulled out her phone and started typing. Let's see, Marcus Ashford. Oh, what? Piper's eyes went wide. Caroline? What? Your hot, rich neighbor? Piper turned her phone screen around. He's not just rich. He's like, dangerous rich. Caroline looked at the screen. It was an article from a business magazine, several years old. The headline read, The Ashford Family. Old money, new questions. She skimmed the article. It talked about the Ashford family's long history in the city, their various business interests, their reputation for being insular, private. There were implications, carefully worded, nothing libelous, that their wealth came from sources that weren't entirely legitimate. Organized crime. That's what the article was suggesting without saying it outright. This is probably just gossip, Caroline said, handing the phone back. Rich people always have rumors following them around. Maybe. Piper didn't look convinced. But maybe be careful, just in case? Caroline nodded, but her mind was spinning. Marcus Ashford. Mafia. It couldn't be true. Could it? That night, Caroline took Sunny for her evening walk later than usual. She'd been distracted all day, thinking about that article, telling herself it didn't matter because Marcus Ashford was just a neighbor she'd spoken to once. The lobby was empty when she came back in, the doorman having stepped away from his desk. Sunny's nails clicked on the marble floor as they headed toward the elevator. The doors opened before Caroline could press the button. Derek stepped out. Her whole body went cold. What are you doing here? I came to talk to you. He was smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. You haven't been returning my calls. Because we're done, Derek. I meant what I said. No, you didn't. He stepped closer. Sunny immediately moved in front of Caroline, a low growl building in her throat. We had a fight. Couples fight. It's normal. We weren't a couple, and that wasn't a fight. Caroline tried to step around him, but he blocked her path. Move. Not until you talk to me. I don't have anything to say to you. That's too bad. His voice hardened. Because I have plenty to say to you. Starting with the fact that I talked to your boss today. Caroline's blood went cold. What? Dr. Reeves, nice guy. We had a good conversation about you. Derek's smile turned mean. About your performance lately, about how distracted you've been, about whether you're really suited for the job. You didn't. I did, and I'll do more than that if you don't stop playing these games. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. You think you can just dump me? You think you can just walk away? That's not how this works, Caroline. Sunny barked, loud and sharp, lunging against her leash. Get your dog under control. Let go of me. I said let her go. The voice came from behind Derek, and something in its tone made every hair on Caroline's arms stand up. She looked past Derek's shoulder and saw Marcus Ashford standing by the elevator, perfectly still, watching them with those pale silver eyes. He wasn't doing anything overtly threatening. His hands were in his coat pockets. His posture was relaxed, but something about him made Derek's grip loosen, made him take a step back. This is none of your business, Derek said, trying to sound confident but not quite managing it. You're in my building. Marcus walked toward them slowly, each step deliberate. Grabbing a woman in my lobby, that makes it my business. I wasn't grabbing her. We were talking. That's not what it looked like. I don't care what it looked like to you. Derek's voice rose. Who even are you? Marcus stopped a few feet away from them. He didn't raise his voice, didn't change his expression, but somehow the temperature in the lobby seemed to drop. "I'm someone who doesn't like seeing women being hurt," he said quietly. "I'm someone who pays very close attention to the people in this building. And I'm someone with a very, very long memory." Derek stared at him for a long moment. Something passed across his face. Recognition, maybe. Or fear. "This isn't over," he said to Caroline, but he was already backing toward the door. "You'll hear from me." "No," Marcus said. "She won't." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a statement of fact. Derek opened his mouth, closed it, then turned and left without another word. The lobby went quiet. Caroline realized she was shaking. Sunny pressed against her legs, whimpering. "Are you all right?" Marcus asked. Yes. I think so." She rubbed her arm where Derek had grabbed her. It was already starting to throb. "Thank you. Let me see." "What?" He nodded toward her arm. "Let me see." She hesitated, then pushed up her sleeve. The bruises were already forming. 4 dark marks where his fingers had been. Marcus's jaw tightened. It was a small movement, barely visible, but Caroline noticed it. "He won't bother you again," he said. "You can't know that." "I can." He met her eyes. "He won't bother you again, Caroline. I promise." She should have been unnerved by the certainty in his voice, by what that certainty implied. Instead, she just felt safe. "How?" she whispered. "You don't need to worry about that." "I don't understand. You don't even know me." Something flickered in his expression. "I know enough." Sunny had stopped growling. She was sniffing Marcus's hand now, her tail wagging cautiously. His fingers found the spot behind her ears, scratching gently. "Your dog has good instincts," he said. "She's never wrong about people." Caroline watched Sunny lean into his touch. She hated Derek from the beginning. "I should have listened to her." "Why didn't you?" It was a fair question. An important one. Caroline had been asking herself the same thing for days. "Because I was lonely," she admitted. "Because I was 45 years old and divorced, and I thought I should be grateful that anyone wanted me at all." The words hung in the air between them. She couldn't believe she'd said them out loud. To a stranger. To this particular stranger. But Marcus didn't look shocked or uncomfortable. He just nodded slowly, like he understood. "That man," he said, "was a fool. And a coward. You barely know him. I know men like him." His voice was hard. "I know exactly what they are." Sunny licked his hand, and the hardness faded. He almost smiled. "You should ice that arm," he said. "Keep the swelling down." "I will. And call me if he contacts you again. Anytime. Day or night." He pulled a card from his pocket and handed it to her. Heavy cream cardstock, just his name, and a phone number in elegant black script. "I mean it." Caroline took the card. "Why are you doing this?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because you were kind to a stray cat," he finally said. "Because you train therapy dogs for children's hospitals. Because when I told you to be still, you didn't ask questions." He paused. "Because someone should have protected you before now, and they didn't." She felt tears prick her eyes, and blinked them back. "I don't need protection." "Everyone needs protection sometimes." He turned toward the elevator. "Good night, Caroline." "Good night, Marcus." He stepped into the elevator and the doors closed. And she stood there in the empty lobby, his card in her hand, her arm throbbing, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. Sunny whined. "I know, girl," Caroline whispered. "I know." The next morning, there were flowers outside her door. White roses. 3 dozen of them in a crystal vase that probably cost more than her car payment. No card, but she knew who they were from. She brought them inside and set them on her kitchen table and stared at them while Sunny ate her breakfast. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I hope the arm is feeling better." M. She saved the number. Then she did something stupid, something reckless, something completely unlike her. She texted back, "It is. The flowers are beautiful. Thank you." 3 dots appeared. Then, "I'm glad you liked them." "There are more where those came from." She smiled despite herself. "Are you always this generous to near strangers?" "No." Her breath caught. "Just you," he added. She should stop this. She should be smart, be careful. She barely knew this man. He might be dangerous. He was almost certainly dangerous, if that article was true. But her fingers typed the response anyway. "Would you like to have coffee sometime?" A long pause. Then, "I would like that very much. But I should tell you something first." Her stomach knotted. "What?" "The article you probably read about my family, the implications. They're not wrong." She stared at the screen. Her heart was pounding. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to know what you'd be getting involved with. Because I don't want to lie to you, Caroline. Not even by omission." "You've had enough of that." She should run. She should delete this number and stay away from him and be the smart, sensible woman she'd always been. But she thought about Derek, and how normal he'd seemed at first, how respectable, how safe. And she thought about Marcus, who was admitting his darkness to her before they'd even had coffee. Which kind of man was really more dangerous? "That coffee," she typed. "When are you free?" They met at a small cafe 3 blocks from her building. He was already there when she arrived, sitting at a corner table with his back to the wall. "Force of habit," he explained when he saw her notice. "I like to see the door." "Should I be worried?" "No." His eyes met hers. "You're safe with me. I promise you that." She believed him. That was the terrifying part. They talked for 2 hours. He asked about her work, her dog, her life. She asked about his family, his business, skirting around the edges of what she now knew. He answered some questions, deflected others, always gently. "Why me?" she finally asked as their second cups of coffee grew cold. "I'm a 46-year-old vet tech who lives alone with her dog. I'm not the kind of woman who dates men like you. What kind of man am I?" She gestured vaguely at him, at his perfect suit and expensive watch, and the barely concealed power that radiated from him like heat. "I don't know," she admitted. "That's the problem." "I'll tell you." He leaned forward slightly. "I'm 53 years old. I've never been married. I run a family business that, yes, operates outside the law in many ways. I've done things that would horrify you. I've made choices that I can't take back." He paused. "But I'm also a man who saw a woman being cruel to herself, letting herself be mistreated, and I couldn't stop thinking about her. About why she didn't see what I saw." "What do you see?" "Strength, kindness, patience." His voice dropped. "Beauty." Her face went hot. "Marcus, I'm not trying to pressure you. I know this is complicated. I know I'm complicated." He reached across the table and took her hand. His fingers were warm and gentle, nothing like Derek's harsh grip. "But I also know that I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that first night. Since I heard you crying through your door and wanted to kill the man who'd made you cry." Her breath caught. "That's intense." "Yes." He didn't apologize for it. "That's who I am." She should leave. She should thank him for coffee and walk away and go back to her safe, small, lonely life. Instead, she turned her hand over in his and laced their fingers together. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Yes. I don't do crazy. Maybe you should start." She looked at their joined hands, at this impossible man who'd stepped into her life and turned everything upside down. "Maybe I should," she agreed. 3 weeks later, Caroline still couldn't quite believe this was her life. Marcus Ashford was not what she expected. In some ways, he was exactly what she expected. Powerful, controlled, commanding. He had phone calls at odd hours. He disappeared sometimes without explanation. His brothers came and went from his penthouse, hard-eyed men who looked at Caroline with surprise and curiosity, but he was also thoughtful, gentle. He remembered every small thing she mentioned, that she liked lavender tea, that she was allergic to peonies, that she worried about a cat at the clinic who wouldn't eat. He sent Sunny a custom-made orthopedic bed after Caroline mentioned her dog's hips were bothering her. He showed up at her door one night with Thai food because she'd mentioned missing the restaurant that had closed down near her old apartment. "How did you even find this?" she'd asked, staring at the containers in disbelief. "I have resources. Marcus. I made some calls." He'd almost smiled. It wasn't difficult. He came to her apartment more often than she went to his. She thought at first it was a security thing, but eventually realized it was something else. "I like it here," he admitted one evening, sitting on her second-hand couch with Sunny's head in his lap. "It's warm. Your penthouse is beautiful. It's a showpiece. It's where I conduct business, intimidate rivals." He scratched behind Sunny's ears. "It's not a home. It could be. I don't know if I know how to make something a home." His voice was quiet. "I haven't had one in a long time." She curled up next to him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Maybe I could help with that." His arm came around her, and he pressed a kiss to her hair. "Maybe you could," he murmured. Everything changed on a Thursday night. Caroline was closing up the clinic alone. Piper had left early with a migraine when the front door opened. "I'm sorry, we're closed." She turned around and her blood ran cold. Derek was standing in the doorway, but he wasn't alone. There were 2 other men with him, big and mean-looking in a way that made her immediately reach for her phone. "Don't!" Derek stepped forward and she saw that his face was wrong, mottled with bruises. One eye swollen nearly shut. "I need to talk to you." "What happened to you? You know what happened to me." His voice was bitter, furious. "Your boyfriend happened to me. He sent his goons to give me a message." Her heart stopped. "What?" "Don't play dumb. Ashford, the Mafia boss you're screwing." Derek came closer and the 2 men followed. "He had me beaten and told me to stay away from you, so I'm sending him a message back." "Derek, I didn't know—" "Shut up." He grabbed her arm, the same arm as before, still slightly tender, and yanked her toward the door. "You're coming with me, and when Ashford comes to get you, we'll be waiting." "This is insane. You can't—" "I can do whatever I want." His calm cracked, revealing something unhinged beneath. "Do you know who my family is? My father has connections, resources. We're going to take Ashford down, and you're going to help us. I'm not going anywhere with you." He hit her. The slap was hard enough to make her ears ring, hard enough to send her stumbling into the counter. Her lips split open. Blood filled her mouth. "You don't have a choice," Derek said. One of the men grabbed her and started dragging her toward the door. She screamed. Across town, Marcus's phone buzzed. He was in a meeting with his brothers, Leo and James, discussing the Kozlov situation when the alert came through. He'd had Caroline's clinic wired with a silent alarm after she'd mentioned working late sometimes. Just in case. He looked at the notification and went completely still. "What?" Leo asked. "Caroline." Marcus was already on his feet. "She's in trouble." "Caroline? The vet?" James frowned. "What kind of trouble?" But Marcus was already moving, already pulling out his other phone and making calls. Within 30 seconds, he had a team mobilizing. Within 60, he was in his car. "Marcus." Leo grabbed his arm. "Think about this. If this is the Talbots, it is. It's her ex-boyfriend, the one I had warned. Then it could be a trap." "I don't care." Leo stared at him. "You've known this woman for 3 weeks." "I don't care." Marcus's voice was ice. "If he's hurt her, I will burn his family to the ground. Do you understand me? I will destroy every single one of them." His brother was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I'm coming with you." Caroline fought. She kicked and scratched and bit, years of self-defense classes coming back to her in bursts of desperate muscle memory. She managed to break one man's nose, managed to slam her heel into Derek's shin hard enough to make him scream. But there were 3 of them, and she was already injured, and eventually they got her into the van. "Stupid," Derek spat, blood streaming from his face. "So stupid. Did you think he actually cared about you? A man like that? You're nothing. You're a toy to him. A pet. You don't know anything about him. I know he's a criminal. I know he's a murderer." Derek's eyes were wild. "And I know that when my father gets through with him, he'll be nothing." The van started moving. Caroline had no idea where they were going. She was tied up in the back, her face throbbing, her arm screaming in pain. But she wasn't afraid. She didn't know why. Maybe she should have been. Maybe she should have been terrified. But all she could think was, he'll come for me. I know he will. Marcus got there in 18 minutes. His men had tracked the van to a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Talbot property. He knew it well. The family had been competitors for years, small time but persistent. They wouldn't be competitors after tonight. "How many inside?" he asked. 6, Leo reported. Maybe 7. Derek Talbot, his cousin Rich, some hired muscle. And Caroline? Alive. I can see her through the window. That was all Marcus needed to hear. He went in through the front door. Didn't bother being subtle. Didn't bother being careful. He had 10 men behind him and a cold, crystalline rage in his chest. The hired muscle went down first. They weren't expecting him to come so fast, so hard. They weren't expecting him to be carrying a gun in each hand and a look on his face that made hardened criminals step back. Derek tried to run. One of Marcus's men caught him and dragged him back into the main room. "Mr. Ashford," Derek's voice shook. "Listen, we can make a deal. My father, your father, is a footnote," Marcus said quietly. "You're a footnote. You made a very stupid decision tonight, Derek. You touched something that belongs to me. She's just a woman. She's everything." Marcus walked past him without another glance. He'd deal with Derek later. Right now, there was only one thing that mattered. He found Caroline tied to a chair in the back room. Her face was bruised, her lips split, her arm hanging at a bad angle. But her eyes, her beautiful hazel eyes, lit up when she saw him. "I knew you'd come," she whispered. Something cracked open in his chest. Something he'd kept locked away for 20 years. He cut her bonds with his pocket knife, as gently as he could. She winced when he touched her arm. "It might be broken," she said. "I'll get you to a doctor." "Marcus." She grabbed his hand with her good one. "What's going to happen to them?" He didn't answer. They both knew he didn't need to. "I don't want—" She trailed off, then started again. "I don't want you to do anything you can't come back from. Not for me." "Caroline." He cupped her uninjured cheek, tilting her face up to look at him. "There is nothing I wouldn't do for you. Do you understand?" "Nothing. We've known each other 3 weeks. I know. This is crazy." "I know," she laughed, which was also a sob. "I think I love you." The world went still. He'd been told those words before. By women who wanted his money or his power or the thrill of being close to danger. He'd never believed them. He'd never wanted to. But Caroline, with her bruised face and her broken arm and her absolute inexplicable trust, was not those women. Caroline was something else entirely. "I know I love you," he said. "I've known since you told that stray cat it could take its time." She laughed again, tears streaming down her face. He kissed her forehead, her uninjured cheek, the corner of her mouth. He wanted to kiss her properly, but her lip was split and she was hurt, and there would be time. There would be so much time. "Let's get you out of here," he said. 6 months later, Caroline stood in Marcus's penthouse, their penthouse now, and barely recognized it. There were plants everywhere, photographs on the walls, a dog bed in the corner where Sonny liked to nap in the afternoon sun, books stacked on the coffee table, a throw blanket on the couch. It looked like a home. "You're thinking about something," Marcus said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Just how different everything is. Good different? She turned in his arms. He was wearing jeans and a sweater, something that still startled her, seeing him in casual clothes, seeing him relaxed, seeing him happy. The best different, she said. He kissed her. He kissed her a lot these days, like he was making up for lost time. Like he couldn't quite believe she was real. I have something for you, he said. Marcus, you don't need to keep buying me things. This isn't that kind of gift. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her heart stopped. I know it soon, he said quietly. I know we've only been together 6 months, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He opened the box. The ring inside was simple and elegant, a single diamond in a platinum setting. Classic. Perfect. Marry me, Caroline. Marcus, I know who I am. I know the life I lead. I know it's dangerous and complicated and not what you planned. He met her eyes. But I also know that I want to spend every day of the rest of my life trying to deserve you. I want to come home to you. I want to build something real with you. I want to be the man you see when you look at me, even when I don't see him myself. She was crying. She was crying and smiling, and her heart was so full she thought it might burst. Yes, she whispered. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to all of it. Yes to dangerous and complicated and not what I planned. She pulled him close, burying her face in his chest. You're what I want. You're all I want. He held her so tight, like she was precious, like she was everything. I love you, he said into her hair. I love you, too. Sunny barked from her bed in the corner, tail wagging furiously. Marcus laughed, a real laugh, the kind that transformed his whole face. I think that's approval. She always knew. Caroline pulled back to look at him, her fiancé, this impossible man who'd changed her entire life. She knew you were good. I'm not good. You're good to me. You're good to her. She kissed him softly. That's all that matters. They got married 3 months later. Small ceremony, close family. His brothers stood up for him, wary at first, but warming to Caroline by the end. Her mother flew in from Florida, thrilled to see her daughter so happy. He's not what I expected, her mother said at the reception. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone softer, safer. Caroline looked across the room to where Marcus was talking to Leo, his head thrown back in laughter at something his brother said. Safe is overrated, she said, and meant it. 1 year later, they adopted a dog, a stray found wandering near the warehouse where Caroline had been held. Marcus had bought the property and demolished it, built a community center in its place. The dog had shown up during construction, skinny and scared and aggressive with everyone who tried to approach it. Everyone except Caroline. You have a gift, Marcus told her, watching her coax the dog closer with patience and treats, the same way she'd done with the cat that first day. I just pay attention, she said. Most people don't pay attention. They named the dog Luna. She was a mutt, probably some pit bull mixed with something else, with a blocky head and a surprisingly gentle temperament once she learned to trust. Now they had 2 dogs. They had a home that felt lived in and warm. They had a life that was strange and complicated, and sometimes dangerous, but also full. So full. Any regrets? Marcus asked her one night, as they sat together on their balcony looking out at the city lights. About what? This. Me. The life you didn't plan. She considered the question seriously, the way she always did. I spent 46 years trying to do everything right, she finally said, following the rules, being sensible, being safe, and I ended up lonely and sad and letting someone treat me like I didn't matter. That wasn't your fault. Maybe not, but I made choices that led me there. She looked at him. And then I made a choice that led me here. To you. To this. She smiled. No regrets. He kissed her hand, her ring catching the light. No regrets? He echoed. And neither of them ever looked back. But peace, Caroline would learn, was not something the Ashford family got to keep for long. It started with a phone call at 3 a.m. Caroline woke to Marcus already sitting up in bed, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and urgent. She couldn't make out the words, but she knew that tone. She'd learned it over the past year, the tone that meant something had gone wrong. Something serious. "What is it?" she asked when he hung up. He didn't answer right away. He sat there in the darkness, and she could feel the tension radiating off him like heat from a furnace. "Marcus." "It's Leo." His voice was flat, controlled. "He's been taken." Her blood went cold. Leo. Marcus's younger brother, the one who'd warmed to her first, who brought her coffee when he came over for meetings, who'd walked her down the aisle at their wedding because her own father had passed years ago. Taken? By who? The Kozlovs. She knew that name. She'd heard it whispered in conversations that went quiet when she entered the room. She knew they were rivals, dangerous ones, that there'd been tension for months. What do they want? Marcus finally looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her stomach drop. He looked scared. Marcus Ashford, who she'd never seen afraid of anything, looked terrified. "They want me," he said. "They want me to come alone to make an exchange. Leo for me. No. Caroline. No." She grabbed his arm, her fingers digging in. "You can't. It's obviously a trap. They'll kill you both." "If I don't go, they'll kill him anyway. They sent proof of life, but they made it clear." He stopped, swallowed. "They made it clear they're not patient men. Then we call the police, the FBI. Someone. We can't. Marcus, we can't." His voice cracked. Just slightly, and that small fracture broke her heart. The things Leo knows, the things he's done. If law enforcement gets involved, he'll spend the rest of his life in prison. If he survives at all. The Kozlovs have people everywhere. Cops, judges. We can't trust anyone outside the family. She wanted to argue. She wanted to scream and cry and shake him until he saw reason. But she looked at his face and understood that he'd already made his decision. He was going to trade himself for his brother. He was going to die for his brother. "There has to be another way," she whispered. "If there is, I'll find it. But I need you to prepare yourself for the possibility that—" "Don't." She pressed her hand over his mouth. "Don't say it. Don't you dare say it." He kissed her palm, then pulled her hand away gently. "I need you to listen to me. If something happens, James will take care of you. I've made arrangements. The penthouse, the accounts, everything. It's all yours. You'll be protected. I don't want to be protected. I want you. I know." He pulled her close, and she could feel his heart pounding against her cheek. "I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry." They held each other in the darkness, and Caroline felt something building in her chest. Not just fear, not just despair. Rage. She was so tired of being the one who waited, the one who got rescued, the one who sat at home while the men in her life made decisions that affected her without consulting her. "Take me with you," she said. "Absolutely not." "Marcus, listen to me. I said no." He pulled back, his eyes fierce. "This isn't a discussion. You're not going anywhere near the Kozlovs. They'd use you against me in a heartbeat. They're already using Leo against you. What difference does it make? The difference is that Leo knew the risks when he joined this family. You didn't. You're not part of this world, Caroline. I won't let you become part of it. I became part of it when I married you. You became part of my life, not this." He gestured vaguely, encompassing everything. The darkness, the danger, the violence that lurked at the edges of their existence. Never this. She wanted to keep arguing, but she could see it was pointless. He'd made up his mind, so she'd just have to change it for him. Marcus left at dawn. He kissed her goodbye like it was the last time, long and deep and desperate, and she let him because she knew he needed it. She told him she loved him. She told him to come back to her. She told him she'd be waiting. And then, the moment his car pulled away, she picked up her phone and called James. "Caroline?" He sounded surprised. "Is everything? I need your help. Marcus told me to keep you safe, to make sure you stay at the penthouse. I know what Marcus told you, and I need you to ignore it." There was a long pause. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "I'm asking you to help me save your brothers. Both of them." Another pause. Then slowly, "I'm listening." The plan came together in pieces. James told her everything, the location of the exchange, the layout of the Kozlov compound, the number of men they'd likely be facing. It was bad. Really bad. Marcus was walking into a death trap, and he knew it. And he was doing it anyway, because that's who he was. But Caroline had spent a year married to him. A year learning his world, his business, his family. A year proving herself bit by bit, until even the most skeptical of his men grudgingly admitted she'd earned her place. She knew things. She had relationships. And she had an idea. "This is insane," James said when she explained it. "Probably. If it doesn't work, we'll all be dead." "Then it needs to work." He stared at her for a long moment. She could see him weighing it, calculating the odds, trying to find a flaw in her logic. "You really love him," he finally said. "More than anything. He'll be furious if this goes wrong. He'll be alive to be furious. That's all that matters." James exhaled slowly, then he nodded. "All right. Let's do it." The Kozlov compound was a sprawling estate north of the city, surrounded by high walls and armed guards, and all the trappings of men who lived in fear of what they'd done. Marcus arrived at noon, as instructed. Alone, as instructed. He walked through the gates with his hands visible, every instinct screaming at him to turn around, to run, to find another way. But there was no other way. There was only Leo, and the choice Marcus had made the moment his brother was taken. They brought him to a large room in the main house. Victor Kozlov was waiting, a heavy man with small, cruel eyes and a smile that never reached them. "Mr. Ashford," Victor gestured to a chair. "Please, sit." "Where's my brother?" "Safe, for now." Victor's smile widened. "I must admit, I didn't think you'd actually come. I thought you'd send men. Try to negotiate. But here you are, alone. Either you're very brave or very stupid. Maybe both. Perhaps." Victor leaned forward. "Do you know why I took your brother, Mr. Ashford? Because you're losing. Because your operations are failing, and your men are deserting, and you need to make a statement." The smile flickered. "I need to remind this city who's in charge. The Ashford family has been a thorn in my side for too long. It ends today. If you kill us, you'll start a war. There's already a war. I'm just finishing it." Victor nodded to his men. "Bring out the other one." They dragged Leo in. He looked rough, bruised, bloody, one arm hanging limp, but he was alive. His eyes went wide when he saw Marcus. "No," Leo breathed. "No, you shouldn't have come." "Quiet," Victor stood. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to kill you both, and then I'm going to send pieces of you to James as a warning. After that," the lights went out. For a moment, there was only darkness and confusion. Shouts, the sound of weapons being drawn, Victor's voice rising in fury. Then the shooting started. Caroline had never fired a gun before 3 hours ago. James had given her a crash course, how to hold it, how to aim, how to squeeze the trigger without flinching. She wasn't good. She wasn't even adequate. But she didn't need to be good. She just needed to be a distraction. The plan was simple. James and a team of Marcus's most trusted men had surrounded the compound, while Victor was focused on the exchange. They'd cut the power and created chaos, drawing the guards away from the main house. Caroline's job was to get inside, to find Marcus and Leo. To get them out while the Kozlovs were distracted. She moved through the darkened hallways with her heart in her throat, following the route James had mapped out for her. She could hear gunfire outside, shouts, the sounds of a battle she couldn't see. Please be alive, she thought. Please, please be alive. She found the room. The door was locked, but one of Marcus's men had given her a device for that. A small electronic tool that bypassed the mechanism in seconds. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. Marcus was on the ground, blood streaming from a wound on his head. Leo was beside him, trying to shield him from Victor, who had a gun aimed at them both. Well, Victor said, turning to look at her. What do we have here? Let them go. He laughed. Or what? You'll shoot me? She raised her gun. Her hands were shaking. She could barely see in the dim emergency lighting. I'll do what I have to do. You're trembling. Victor stepped closer. You've never killed anyone. I can tell. You don't have it in you. Maybe not. She steadied her grip. But I have enough to pull this trigger. And at this range, I won't miss. He studied her. She didn't know what he saw, but something made him pause. You love him, he said. You actually love him. Yes. Do you know what he is? What he's done? Yes. And you love him anyway. I love him because of who he is. All of who he is. She met his eyes. Put down the gun. Victor smiled. It was an ugly expression, full of contempt and something that might have been admiration. No, he said and raised his weapon. Caroline fired first. The gun kicked in her hands, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Victor stumbled backward, a red bloom spreading across his shoulder. Not a kill shot. She hadn't been aiming for one, but enough to make him drop his weapon. Enough to make him fall. His men rushed in, but so did James, bursting through a side door with a team behind him. The room erupted into chaos again. More shouts, more gunfire, bodies hitting the floor. Caroline didn't see any of it. She was already on her knees beside Marcus, her hands pressing against the wound on his head, her voice breaking as she said his name over and over. I'm here, she told him. I'm here. I've got you. Stay with me. His eyes fluttered open. For a moment he looked confused. Then he saw her, and his expression shifted into something between fury and wonder. Caroline? His voice was hoarse. What? How? Later. We need to move. You shouldn't be here. Too late for that. She helped him sit up, her arm around his shoulders. Can you walk? Yes. He struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on her. Leo, James has him. Come on. They made it out of the compound as the sun was setting. The Kozlov forces were scattered, Victor badly wounded and in custody. James had decided to let him live, for now, as leverage against the rest of the family. It was over. It was finally over. Marcus didn't speak to her for 3 days. He was in the hospital for the first 2. A concussion, some cracked ribs, nothing that wouldn't heal. She stayed by his bed the entire time, holding his hand, talking to him even when he wouldn't respond. On the 3rd day, he finally looked at her. You could have died. So could you. That's different. Why? Because you're a man? Because you're the head of the family? She shook her head. I'm your wife, Marcus. Your partner. We're supposed to face things together. You're not trained for this. I'm not helpless. Her voice was firm. I was helpless once. I let a man treat me like I was nothing because I thought that's what I deserved. I will never be that person again. Not even for you. He was quiet for a long moment. You shot Victor Kozlov. I shot him in the shoulder. Deliberately. Why not kill him? Because I'm not a killer. Because I didn't need to kill him to stop him. She took his hand. Because I wanted to show you that there are other ways, that violence isn't the only answer. In my world, in our world. She squeezed his fingers. It's our world now, both of ours. And maybe I can't change everything about it, but I can try to make it better. I can try to remind you that there's another way to be strong. He looked at her for a long time. She could see him processing, recalculating, adjusting his understanding of who she was and what she was capable of. Then, slowly, he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it. I married a warrior, he said quietly. You married a vet tech with a good dog. I married a woman who walked into a mob compound to save me, who shot a crime boss without blinking. His eyes were soft. A warrior. She smiled despite herself. I was terrified. That's what makes it brave. He pulled her closer, and she went, careful of his injuries, pressing her forehead to his. Don't ever do that again, he murmured. Don't ever make me. Deal. 2 years later, they built something new. Marcus stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the family business, handing more control to James and Leo. He didn't leave entirely. That wasn't possible, not with a legacy like his, but he found a balance. A way to be present without being consumed. Caroline opened an animal sanctuary outside the city, funded by the Ashford Family Foundation. A place for strays and rescues, for animals that had been abandoned or abused, that needed patience and gentleness and time. She called it Second Chances. Sonny was too old to make the trip out there every day, but Luna went with Caroline each morning, greeting the new arrivals with a wagging tail and a calm presence that helped them feel safe. You've done something amazing here, Marcus told her, standing in the main building on opening day, surrounded by volunteers and visitors and animals finding their way to new lives. We did it together. You had the vision. You had the resources. She smiled at him. We make a good team. He pulled her close, right there in front of everyone, and kissed her thoroughly. Get a room, Leo called from across the building, and everyone laughed. That night, they sat on the porch of their new house. Not the penthouse, but a real house, with a yard for the dogs and a garden. Caroline was slowly learning to tend. Do you ever regret it? Marcus asked. You keep asking me that. Because I keep waiting for you to realize you made a mistake. She turned to look at him. This man she loved. This complicated, dangerous, tender-hearted man who'd changed her entire life. I was alone, she said quietly. I was alone, and I'd given up on ever being anything else. And then you showed up in my hallway and looked at me like I mattered, like I was worth protecting, worth fighting for. You are. I know that now, because of you. She took his hand. You didn't just save me from Derek that night. You saved me from the person I was becoming. Someone who'd accepted that she'd never be enough. You were always enough. Maybe, but you made me believe it. He kissed her, soft and slow, and she melted into him the way she always did. When they finally pulled apart, she was smiling. No regrets, she said. Never. Not for a single moment. He smiled back, and it was the smile she loved best, open and warm and entirely hers. Then let's go inside, he said. Our family is waiting. Luna was there, and Sonny and a new puppy they were fostering who might not be leaving anytime soon. James was coming for dinner, and Leo, who was bringing the woman he'd started seeing, a teacher who had no idea what the Ashford family actually did, and somehow fit perfectly anyway. It wasn't the life Caroline had planned. It wasn't safe or simple or easy. But it was hers, and it was full, and she'd never wanted anything more.